Before we start this show, just a word from our sponsor, 20 by 20 Apparel. Founded in 2015, 20 by 20 Apparel brings original tributes to pro wrestling's classic arenas, moments, and events. They look to spotlight the bloopers, bleeps, and body slams along with the biggest, smallest, strangest, and strongest that pro wrestling has had to offer. Along with their awesome line of pro wrestling apparel, they do offer many services. In the world of wrestling, there are hundreds of shirts, promotions, flyers, social media accounts, and ads. Don't get lost in the sea of parody shirts and display fonts. They can provide professional graphic design services at a reasonable price. 20 by 20 also hand screen prints all the tees in-house. If you would like to discuss possible run of tees, posters, koozies, foam fingers, or whatever, drop them a line. Go to 20 by 20 Apparel. That's the number 20x, the number 20 apparel.com. Now, let's get to the show.
Fresh is the word.
I'm Jim Duggan, got long wood for plenty hoes. I keep it fresher than fresh, but you already know. You suckers bummy, I'm money, I got a ton of flows. My weed loud like a motherfucking thunder roll. Your shit quiet like you ballin' on a budget though. We see your kicks and we laugh and yellin' what are those. You see me shining like a suit on puffy. You know my grindin' shit is too strong, buddy. That's why the dude call money. I be stuntin' like it's nothing at all. Cause it's nothing to me, it's probably something to y'all. Trying to smoke like me, then come and fuck with your dog. Got a closet full of kicks, you can't cop at the mall. And I'm fresher than the freshest, you can tell it's in my essence. Bitch, you see the way I'm rapping, yes I do this shit to death. I tell I'm running out of breath, I tell somebody cut a check. But either way you know it's fresh, and either way you know it's fresh. Fresh, we fresh. Fresh, goddammit, we fresh.
Welcome to the Fresh is the Word podcast. I'm your host, Kelly K. Fresh Frazier. And on Fresh is the Word, we like to deliver wisdom through great stories from the minds of bright creatives of pop culture. Through those stories, we like to dissect the journey of our guests and present actionable lessons and advice for our listeners, no matter what career or avenue of artistry they pursue. And before we get into this episode, I want to give a shout out to Knox Money, Bang Belushi, and Foulmouth for the theme music for Fresh is the Word. And if you would like to support the podcast, you can always go to freshisthepodcast.com and just share any of the links for any of the episodes on any of your social media platforms. And also, you can subscribe to Fresh is the Word pretty much anywhere that podcasts are streamed. And that includes Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, pretty much everywhere. And please rate and review, especially on Apple Podcasts. It will definitely help out the show. If you want to contact me, you can always reach me by email at djkfresh@gmail.com. Or you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at KFresh is the Word, and on Facebook at facebook.com/KFresh. And you can also follow Fresh is the Word on Twitter at Fresh is the Word, and that's is with an IZ, Instagram at Fresh is the Word Podcast, and Facebook at facebook.com/Fresh is the Podcast. And this is episode 137. And on this episode, my guest is writer, actor, filmmaker, college professor, and all-around weirdo David C. Hayes. During our interview, we talk about his comic book, Rottentail, and how it got adapted into a film, which premieres on Thursday, April 11th in selected theaters. We also talked about his creative process, bouncing around between so many mediums throughout his career, and some of his favorite projects he's worked on, among other great stories and lessons Hayes had to offer. And for those in Michigan, in the Detroit area, on Thursday, April 4th, Source Point Press is proud to present the first world premiere of the Rottentail movie at the Imagine Theater in Royal Oak, Michigan. The premiere is invitation only, except for 50 members of the public that will be let into the premiere free of charge. They encourage you to show up and be amongst the 50, as well as the 200 invited guests, which include director Brian Skiba, actress Lori Love, Rottentail creator, and the guest on this episode, David C. Hayes, along with other film producers and soundtrack artists will be in attendance. For your chance to see the premiere, simply go down to the Imagine Royal Oak anytime the day of the premiere, which is this Thursday, as I said, between 6 p.m. and 6:55 p.m. And look for a Source Point Press representative who will be giving away the first 50 people a free ticket into the 7 p.m. premiere showing. For more information about the Rottentail movie, go to rottentailthemovie.com and there'll be a listing of where you can see Rottentail, perhaps in your area. All right, let's get into the interview with David C. Hayes. I met you originally at the first Astronomicon. You were at the Source Point Press booth, and we just pretty much clicked the moment I met you, man. You were, I think I had like a bullet t-shirt on, and you just like too sweet me, and I was like, oh, all right, cool.
Yeah, well, it's what we do.
Yes, of course, what we do. So, you're always working on some things. There's always things, that you just released, or I think the big thing right now is in regards to the Rottentail film that's coming out. It's based off your book. Talk about it, how, the original book that you did and how it got made into a film.
Sure. So the whole process for Rottentail, our giant mutant Easter bunny started like, was it 2019 now? Like 17 years ago.
Oh, damn.
It's been a long time. It's been a really long time. It started as a screenplay. And I wrote the screenplay in 2002. And, it's been over a couple of years, just here and there. And then it was shopped around a little bit, and nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted to take a chance on that. So I reformatted some things. I took a different approach to it, and then I decided I was going to put out a graphic novel. And that was in about 2005 or 2006. That process started. And it was nights and weekends. Kurt Belcher did the art over the course of about 2 years. So we're in 2008 now. And we shopped the graphic novel around, and nobody wanted that either. So I was like, oh man, I mean, it was a fun story. It's a good time. It was real goofy. There had some real presence to it, and I couldn't figure out why it wasn't connecting with people. So eventually, like 2010 or 2011, I decided, well, I'm just going to self-publish this. And so I put out I printed like 10 copies of it, and still nobody wants to take a look at this thing. In the meantime, I was doing a bunch of films. I had by 2010, I had around 60 or 70 films under my belt as an actor and a producer and a writer at times. A couple of books, and so this was always in the back burner though. And I eventually showed it to Travis McIntyre at Source Point Press, and this was right around 2014 or 2015, and he said, "Yeah, we'll do it, but I hate the cover." And I was like, oh, okay, that's wonderful. He switched the cover out, and suddenly everyone wants it. Suddenly it's just this huge underground hit.
Oh, okay.
And it helps that Source Point Press, has a presence. That's the publisher, of course.
Oh, yeah.
And we're touring all over the place with it and shoving it in people's faces. And, when I get a chance to pitch it, when I talk to somebody about it, then, their eyes light up and they kind of get it at that point.
So is it that it was just that little tweak of the cover that kind of changed things?
Yeah, I think it was the cover and being able to get it in front of people.
Yeah.
Because before, I was doing shows and stuff. I was doing conventions, but I was the actor they would come in, the celebrity they would book in, on like second or third tier. You got your big guys, then you got that fat dude that does horror movies. So I was just, an add-on guy, and I would tell some people would like it, some people wouldn't, and then I kind of I stopped the acting portion of things. Really in a few years ago, I'm retired from that, and I started to focus on the writing aspects, and then going out with Source Point at the conventions and focusing on books, and that helped out a lot. But I think the biggest thing was taking the cover by Michael Bracco and putting that right up front.
How what was the process of turning this story into a film?
So we'll pick up where we left off with Source Point getting the book. And Travis calls me. He's like, "Hey, I think we want to make Rottentail the first movie." And I said, No, man. I tried to get this made for years. Forget it. pick something good. Pick something like, Greg's Monstrous, or, get The Rod or Nora from Casey Pierce, and you go out there, we'll do that. And he was like, no, we're going to do this. So I introduced him to Shoreline Entertainment, and Shoreline manages me as a screenwriter. They're my management company for screenwriting. And Travis hit it off with those guys, and he explained that he wanted to put this together. So what they did was they got in contact with another good friend of mine, Brian Skiba, and I had produced Brian's Blood Moon Rising, and appeared in his movie Crushed Velvet. I co-wrote with him. So we had this really long history of Brian and I doing films together, and Brian was getting pretty hot at Lifetime movies, if that's a thing, and he was doing a bunch of those. He was in the hopper for the Lifetime movies. People were digging him, and so what Shoreline did was introduce Brian to Travis and brought it all kind of full circle, and then the fundraising began. And Source Point Press functioned as the producer and produced the film. So Brian and I rewrote the story to update it a bit and have some fundamental changes. So what you're seeing on screen, or you're about to see on screen, isn't exactly 100% the comic, but it's much, much, much. Oh, you guys don't even know what you're in store for.
Oh,
you have
boy.
no idea what's coming your way with this.
Oh boy. How how is
great.
this version of the script different than what you had thought about all those years ago when you were trying to pitch it?
All those years ago, I was writing for a really low budget. And I was thinking, oh, we may be able to get a couple $100,000 for this, and then we'll be able to do this and do that, and the rabbit's going to have to work like this. So I was thinking lower scale, limited locations, and what we've got now is a little broader. It's a little bigger. Technology, of course, has advanced, but most of the film is practical effects. It's like old school practical effects. The bunny was designed by the Pirates of the Caribbean special effects team. So, and the Watchmen, they were on that. And so, it's much bigger than my original story. And therefore we had to do much bigger things with it. So there's a great subplot in here with, that's real anti-dogma, anti-tradition. I say a little anti-religion. And it plays much better than what it did before. And Rottentail in the old story was really more of I don't want to call him an anti-hero because he was still a jackass, but he really is more of an anti-hero in this one, in the film version.
With after seeing the final product, what was your reaction to this movie? After you did all the rewrites, you made it, you updated it, and then you worked with all these different people to bring it to life. What was your reaction? What were you thinking when you finally saw the movie?
I thought that it was wonderful. There was times I laughed out loud, and I knew what was going to happen for the most part. What I did do, though, is I was on set for 3 days. I visited, but I didn't do anything else. I didn't produce. I didn't act. I'm not in it. I didn't, try and run any special effects. I didn't give any notes or anything. It was the first time I just let a film go. I wrote it and let it go. And it was an amazing experience to see what they did with it. I'm so pleased. There was a bunch of audibles called on set, so there were some surprises for me, which was cool. And everything just worked out great. I think they did a really good job. It looks good. The acting is incredible. The direction is great. Special effects look good. Most importantly, the bunny works. The bunny works in close-ups. The bunny works in long shots. It just works. And if that didn't work, the whole thing was dead. If you could see the zippers and the seams, the whole thing is gone. But no, it's solid. It's solid.
Having to, kind of step away and let them do their thing, did they ask you for any input during the making of it, though?
No, because I told him not to. And, I had worked with Brian so much and for so long that, I had complete confidence in him. I had complete confidence in Travis McIntyre. I knew most of the crew. They were old friends that was shot in Arizona, and I had filmed a lot in Arizona back in the day. I knew some of the cast, so I was really comfortable with the team there. And I was really happy when I got to set and I just got to hang out. And I didn't have to work or make chili or get chairs for people or do everything the low budget producers have to do, drive someone somewhere.
How did it feel to like just see your work, your work being made like that, but not really being hands-on and being able to just chill and just see it happening, see the process happening?
I thought I would be weird with it, but I kind of liked it. It was, it was like, how when you go into work and you're not really working that day, and everyone else is busting their ass, you're just kind of hanging out, like chatting with people because you're bored.
Right.
That's exactly what it felt like.
Nice. When it comes down to, you already kind of said some details in regards to what the story is kind of in certain ways. Mm-hmm. But what do you feel like the sort of overall underlying theme of Rottentail is, and how do you feel like it was portrayed on the big screen?
Oh yeah, the overall theme is you can't escape your past. That's a theme that I deal with all the time in all kinds of my work. You can't escape your past. And the secondary theme is something that I really like to do, and that's to kind of like upend tradition. I focus on holidays, and I really pick apart holidays. We got a comic coming out called Kringle, where Santa goes Rambo on a town this year. Next year is Turkey Day. I've got a novel called Cherub that's all about Valentine's Day and horrible, awful things. And I really like taking what people think is supposedly a tradition and kind of like, giving them what the truth is. Easter was a mishmash, pagan holiday. So the Christians overtook some pagans in order to get them in line. They made, oh, look, the resurrection of Christ is on this day, the same day you do your spring solstice. Look at that. We're all the same.
Oh.
So sometimes it's like these giant lies. So it's on one hand, that you can't escape your past. On the other hand, we're all living these lies, and it's time to expose them and do it in the goriest, funniest way possible.
Nice. Yeah, and you're a bit of a character, man. Like, I know that there's always going to be a weird, sick sense of humor in any of the stories that you do.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I mean, a lot of people call me like a horror writer, and that's fine and all. And I've written a lot of horror. I've written some crime. I was in a lot of horror movies way back in the day. It was kind of my shtick. But I prefer to look at myself as kind of like a satirist. I deal in satire. It's disgusting. It's gross.
Right.
Sometimes it's a 2-hour-long dick joke, but it's going to be satire.
That's that's kind of go back a little bit, into your start. What kind of a kid were you, and when did you start doing a lot of this creative work? Because you've done a little bit of everything over, after, in all these years that you've been doing stuff. Where did you get your start, and, what kind of a kid were you?
So I grew up in Michigan, and in mid-Michigan, and pretty rural town. And I was a weird kid. I was that kid, the one that they would look at and say, oh, there's that one, like hide your pets. He's coming by. And it was, more because I was into different things. I was into monsters. I was into science fiction. I preferred to read and watch a movie than to hang out with other human beings. So I was kind of a loner in that sense. And I kind of got labeled this weird little kid. And it persisted. And I back in the day in rural Michigan, this is like in the 70s, 70s and early 80s, you couldn't say, hey, I want to go out for a play. Because you'd get beat up. I want to write books. Well, that's stupid, son. You should go be a mechanic or a doctor. Those are the only two options you have.
Right.
And so I I got through everything, and I graduated high school and went out into the world. And I hadn't done that. I had pushed all of the thoughts of creating things way to the back burner until I was in college. So I went to Michigan State, and I decided I was going to just step my toe in the waters, and I became an English major. And so I always planned on teaching English, in some high school somewhere. Right. That was the plan, the backup plan, in case, nothing worked out. And I took a creative writing class, and my roommate, I'll never forget, Alan Zagish was my roommate. Dr. Al, he's a Health First Chiropractic, Grand Rapids, Michigan, if anyone's, needs an adjustment.
Oh, yeah.
And he read some of the stuff I did, and he was like, this doesn't suck. And that's really all I needed. That was the first person to tell me, oh, this doesn't suck. And it was just kind of, balls to the wall from that point. I graduated. I tried to do the corporate thing, and I blew my mind. And I moved to Chicago, and I started working for a coffee company and for Starbucks. And I got into a local theater company, and I started to do plays. And then I was writing some more plays. And this is all in like 96 is when that all started. So, we're like 23 years into this journey. And ostensibly I started late, but I tried to make up for it, in volume. So I was doing theater. I was writing theater. I've had some plays done in New York and Phoenix, which is great. Got into the film thing, moved from Chicago to Phoenix, and I was working on the West Coast for a while. The books and comics were always there. I always wanted to be in comics. That was my big dream. And it took the back burner to film until recently. But yeah, I have occupational envy is what I have. So if I see something cool, I got to do it. And I was a professional wrestler for a while, stand-up comedian for a while, paranormal investigator for a while, just pretty much everything.
What finally got you to, get into doing comics? If that was the one thing that you really wanted to do, at what point were you like, yo, I want to do that? And what steps did you take to get get comics published?
It was super hard for me in the 90s, like the mid 90s, to do comics. Because we didn't have the technology we have right now. There wasn't, the print on demand places and, digital things. There was an Adobe Photoshop, but, I had no clue how it worked. This is largely, the dark ages for digital things. So it was a lot easier to go to like Columbia in Chicago, go to film school.
Yeah.
Start in film school, and they give you film and you shoot a movie and you start working on music videos, and then you end up shooting shitty vampire movies like Shower of Blood, in the suburbs with giant booby models, it's just, which is a true thing. And that's how things, that was my first writing job actually. And that's how things work. It was easier to make films than it was to make comics. And, it just stayed there the whole time. Everything was in the back burner, and I started to, pay my bills with film. So the comics even took a further backseat. And here and there I would dabble. There was a short out here, and I won a couple short comic writing competitions, and so they were published. I think there's like a Starship Troopers comic out there with a backup story I did in it somewhere. So real tiny things until I decided that Rottentail wasn't going to make it as a film. So let's do it. Let's do it as a comic. And even then, it just sat there, a complete graphic novel, just sitting there waiting for someone like Travis to find it.
In all these years, you were, doing all these different things, but it was all creative works. They all kind of, when they, culminate, sort of lend itself to each other. What sort of advice would you give to people who want to get into sort of some sort of creative outlet, but maybe not sure which avenue to go? Because it looks like you dipped your toes in so many avenues.
Yeah. That's kind of my advice. I first and foremost, I'm not a comic writer. I'm not a novel author. I'm not a playwright. I'm not a screenwriter. I'm a storyteller. Like first and foremost, I'm a storyteller, and my only master is the story. Now, whatever venue I choose, whatever medium I choose to tell that story in, is going to be, up to the story itself, what lends itself the best to it, or what opportunity I'm given. But yeah, there's opportunities all over the place to just go tell stories. With the, like the digital revolution of just like the past 5 years means that anyone that can upload a file to Amazon is now an author.
Right.
There's nothing stopping anybody. There's so much, this, and I started all this stuff pre-internet, so now that there's there's tutorials for absolutely everything. The only excuse someone has for not trying something is just basic fear. That's all it is. Fear or laziness. Because the world is wide open now. Things are easier. People there's companies out there that are far more receptive too. You know, when I started writing, you couldn't email your stories out to a magazine, for example, or a publisher. You know, you had to get the mail and put it in the envelope and, you know, make some photocopies and put some stamps on it. There was a cost. So, you know, now things are so wide open. Only reason why someone's not going to do it is because they really don't want to, like I said, or afraid or lazy, all wrapped up in I don't really want to. I'd rather just talk about it.
Right. When you have an idea for a story, how do you decide which medium you want to use?
It depends a little bit. So things like I find comics to be the perfect medium most of the time for things I want to do. But there's exceptions. So I would think like, you know, this upcoming comic Turkey Day about some parasites, alien parasites, and invading a turkey farm, and the turkeys doing what we did to the Native Americans on a small town. And that would be incredibly difficult to do in a film.
Right.
Super difficult. It'd be really hard to convey in a novel. But as a comic, I mean, I could blow up Jupiter and have parasite alien turkeys. It's pretty cool. I can do that. And so the comic is the best medium for that. There's things that work better as films sometimes. You know, a heartfelt romantic comedy is going to work far better as a film usually than a novel or a comic book. So you try and put it in the medium that suits the story the best. Really, the Rottentail, you know, what we have is a wonderful film. It's a great film. That story probably wouldn't have been the best story to tell in comic format. There's way too much sound involved. There's way too much like real motion, not the illusion of motion in like a comic that conveys what we've got going on here. But the original story, I think, is a great comic though.
Okay.
So it all depends on what you're trying to do.
Over the years, with everything that you've done, you know, how important was it for you to be open-minded and be a student of whatever craft you were working on? And who are the people that were sort of your mentors along the way? And, you know, what do you feel like a mentor is?
So I think there's a couple of different types of mentors. There's the physical, able to really know and talk to and get with mentor. And I've had a couple of those over the course of my career, most notably the artist I've been working with. You know, I would call Brian Skiba, the director of Rottentail, one of my mentors, because you know he was far more well versed in the visual aspect of things than I was, and he really showed me a great deal. I've learned an incredible amount from Sean Seal, the artist on The Rot, who is a fine artist, and you know I think we find our mentors wherever we need them, as far as mentors you actually know and can talk to and relate with. Then I think there's this kind of the abstract mentors, the people that influence you a great deal from afar. And I would say that, my biggest mentors would probably be Clive Barker, David Cronenberg, and John Waters.
Okay. Sweet. You know, when you're, working on all these things, and like we've said many times, they're different mediums. How do you, keep yourself open to collaboration? How do you deal with any sort of differences in opinion, creative setbacks? How do you deal with all that?
Oh God, it's every day. There's not one project I've ever been on that's gone smoothly, and it just doesn't work that way. In all reality, I mean, I know that it looks like I've got this huge body of work, but I have failed far more than I've succeeded, and so that's kind of the idea that what we have to deal with when you're doing these things. For every, Rottentail graphic novel that's come out, there's 6 projects that have, fallen apart. that no one's ever seen. For every film that's made, there's 5 that don't, that you work really hard on and you try and get through. So I think that kind of perseverance is inherent in people that want to do this for a living. That the born storytellers, I mean, I couldn't stop if I tried. I threaten to like quit all the time because, I'm an old man, but I can't. I'm not going to. And that's just, who we are as people. The entire Source Point crew, the same way. Just born storytellers. That they're not going to quit. And there are setbacks constantly. And I think that's kind of the testament of like who I want to be hanging around with, who I want my immediate mentors to be, are the people that don't let those setbacks happen, or let those setbacks set them back, because they're going to happen. And I think that's, every success story you see out there, and by success story, I mean someone who, is not, is out there making the things they want to make, not the millionaires, because there's very precious few millionaires. Just if you're out there making what you want to make and you're sticking to it, then, you're my hero.
Yeah, that brings up a good point. Anybody, listening to this, no matter what their sort of avenue of artistry is, what advice would you give them about the type of people that they should have around them, or the type of people that they should work with? What sort of advice would you give them?
That's a good question. I learned a long time ago that I work best when I'm the project manager. And this is for most things. Like, this whole new idea of not working on a film and just letting people do it, I love that. I'm going to do more of that. But, as far as like comics are concerned, or, when I have a book coming out from a different publisher, I like to be the guy in control of things, of making the decisions. And that way, if you're the person making the decisions, even if you're going through a different company, then you can guarantee that the decision is actually being made. And that's kind of the death knell of things. People who have the inability or to make a decision, or they just choose not to. And it could be any kind of decision. Like, what kind of cover do we have? What market should we put this in? What kind of marketing are we dealing with? And over the course of the past couple of decades, I've had to learn all these different aspects of publishing and entertainment and storytelling, and, even like music production and, everything else that you have to figure out to get the job done. And I think that's really, the first part of it. Be the person, that stirs the drink. Secondly, when you surround yourself with people, there's absolutely no time for people who are just all talk. And they're pretty obvious right off the bat. There's people that talk, and there's people who do. And the people who talk love to talk. It's easier to talk than it is to do anything. But the people that do don't talk so much. And those are the people I really like, to hang my reins on, and follow them along, and they can follow me along, and it's a mutual thing. So that's what I really liked about Source Point Press so much, is that it was just a bunch of people doing, a collective of people just out there doing it, and that appeals. And when you're that person, you're the only one doing it in a group, it gets tiresome and bothersome, and you get frustrated. And I've been there, and the best thing to do is just lose that group. Just lose it. You can be friends with someone. You don't have to work with everyone that you're friends with.
All right.
And you don't have to, be friends with everyone you work with.
When you have so many projects that you're working on at one time, how do you keep everything organized, and how do you feel when something kind of falls by the wayside because it just doesn't work out?
So I'm looking at right now, I have a great big whiteboard with the projects and status projects on it, and what needs to be done next, and page counts and things. So yeah, it's a massive like school whiteboard I use with dry erase markers. That's how I keep on track. How do I feel when things fall by the wayside? I'm not really concerned because I am going to get to everything. I don't not finish. There's absolutely no way I'm going to not finish something. And if it gets started, it's going to happen. It could take 17 years, like Rottentail did, or it could take, 6 months, like, this Turkey Day is going to do. It just, It all depends on what's coming up first, what needs the most attention. You know, when you were in school, the kids that needed the most attention got the most attention from the teacher, and the kids that didn't need the most attention, they kind of got let slide a little bit.
Yeah.
These are all these projects are like kids. Some of them need like hands-on. I gotta baby this through because I've got an artist doing this, or I've got a producer looking at that, so I've got to really focus on that for a minute. But some things you just have to let slide for a little bit and know that you're always going to come back. And that's one of the first things I learned when I had my epiphany in like the 2005-ish, and that epiphany let me realize that I don't have any end of fun ideas to do. I'm not going to run out. In fact, I have too many. So things can sit, things can wait. Everything doesn't need to happen right away. When the time's right, things will happen. Or things will happen over the course of a long period of time, just little bits here and there. Or something will get fast-tracked. It just all depends on what's going on. And, I'll wait nearly 20 years for something to happen. I have no problem with that. Well, now I do, because I'm really old. But I used to not have any big problems with that.
You say you feel like you just never have an end of ideas coming through. How do you sort of keep everything fresh, and how do you sort of not fear any of your ideas? Why do you kind of tackle as many ideas that you can?
I think because when you get right down to it, I think that they may not all be the best ideas, but for like a few minutes, they're the best idea I've ever had.
Right.
And so I don't write any ideas down, and I'll decide to do something if I keep coming back to it in my head. So if it keeps cropping up, oh hey, there was that. Oh, crops up again. Hey, there was that one again. Then it's kind of the keeper. The one and dones kind of just float through and they go away and they don't resonate. So it's kind of a, like a little conversation with myself half the time. And those are the ones that I go, all right, let's try and move this one forward. Once in a while, I'll run things past my wife. And if she says it's a horrible idea, I know it's awesome. So we're going to go ahead with it. But yeah, it's really just a waiting game in my own head. And then I like thematic things though. I know what's going to kind of appeal to me. There's and I go in spurts too. So like the holiday thing's real big for me right now. And you're going to see next year in 2020, the supernatural Western is going to be really big for me because there's a few of those coming out. It's all what's resonating with me at the time. And just like anyone else, I go through phases. I'll have a great big Agatha Christie run for a while and do some kind of fun mystery. So that's actually coming out. We've got one of those next year as well. A nice, fun kind of a noir mystery.
Nice.
All kinds of good stuff coming out.
What sort of advice would you give to any creator in regards to tackling ideas that come to mind?
It's going to vary per person. I can tell you what I do. And that's the only real advice that I'll give is that to tell you what works for me. And that is when I like to work. This is going to sound really bizarre. So if there's an idea that comes to mind and I know that I'm going to tackle it, then I like to work like the old American International Pictures worked. That was the Roger Corman company and the what's his name? The Larry Cohen company that tackled the B movies. They made like I Was a Teenage Werewolf and Beast from Haunted Cave and all kinds of weird stuff. And what they would do is when they came up with an idea, they would make a poster. They would create the poster for their idea. That was kind of solidify the thematic aspects of it. What do they want to tackle with it? And then they would go to the drive-ins and show the kids coming out of the drive-in a few posters, and the kids would pick the ones they make next, whoever got the most votes. So what I do is when I come up with an idea, I like to commission, if it's a comic, for example, I like to commission a cover. put my cover together. And if I put the cover together, then it's something I've already started. So, well, of course I'm going to finish it now. It's something I've already started. But with that cover there, that kind of solidifies it in my mind, like this is going to be a product, and I can eventually move into making that product. So yeah, I do the covers first. If I'm doing a movie, I'll do a movie poster first. I know not everyone works that way. Sometimes I'll see a piece of art and I'm like, oh my gosh, can I buy that? And I'll buy, the rights to some artwork, knowing that, oh, that's going to make a cover for something someday. And I totally judge books by their covers. And the stuff's on my shelf's got a cool cover, and that's kind of how I work it. And I know it's kind of ass backwards, but that's the process. Now the world knows.
No, that's kind of an interesting process, because if you're going to create this sort of like the cover, or like they did back in the day with the poster, you got to kind of put your idea into that small little space, and it kind of gives you a nice jumping off point to sort of, like kind of work backwards. I've been kind of studying this past week about copywriting. And a lot of the basics that I see is that, every word matters, and you're trying to, get in touch with people's feelings and their needs, solve a problem, within this small little window. So like that, when you're talking about that, I felt the same thing where you're kind of creating that sort of that idea into like a small little space, just as like to try to grab your own imagination. And like they did with the movies, they showed it to all the kids and stuff, and trying to see which one grabs their imagination first, and then sort of your ideas, your world is able to expand from there. So yeah, it's a very interesting idea.
Thank you.
Like when you're working in that way, and you sort of have an idea, and then you might sort of commission a cover or some sort of visual piece to get the ball rolling. Where does your mind where's your mind go at that point? What sort of creative freedom do you have at that point?
I do a lot of thinking first. So I'm a big outliner. I will outline everything. I need to know where I'm going with the story, where it ends, so I know how to begin it. And that way everything can come full circle. Things that happen in page 1 matter on page 60, or in, scene 1 matters at the very end. So I outline pretty detailed. I will do a plot breakdown of what happens step by step. And get us to where we're going there. So, I teach creative writing and communications too. So I'm kind of a structured Nazi in that manner. So once I have the image, then I'll decide what kind of length or what kind of medium we're looking for. Because not all stories are going to be like a 3-issue miniseries. Not all stories are going to be an 80-page graphic novel. Some might just be a 20-page one-shot. You never know with comics. And with film, you're always trying to shoot for the feature because there's no money in shorts. But when we're talking about comics or like novellas or novels, you're going to want to pace it out to what's necessary. And then I'll outline in very detailed manner. And then I generally don't deviate from my outlines, because I put a great deal of work into the outline itself and the structure itself. And I'll make all my big changes as far as structure is concerned in the outline phase. And then at that point, I'm simply just going in and I'm just putting in dialogue, doing character development, and filling it in with the details.
All these years, with everything that you've done, been a part of, been involved with, what are some of your favorite moments? What are some of your favorite works, or just favorite things to be a part of?
I'd say as an actor, I'll go that far back. My favorite thing that I was ever a part of was called Bloody Bloody Bible Camp. And that was so much fun. It was a slasher movie about a transvestite nun at a Bible camp. Just a comedy. It was an homage to the 70s and 80s, and it took place in the 70s and 80s. And I got to play the harbinger guy. So you remember the guy from Friday the 13th that said, "You're all doomed." I had a pretty big part as that character, and I got to be in there with Reggie Bannister from Phantasm, and just had a really good time with that. So that's my my pinnacle as an actor. If I was going to break things up, I would probably say Rottentail is my screenwriting triumph. That's what I'm most happy with currently. There's always room for something to take its place. As a comic, I think the Rot miniseries is probably my best. Although I am partial to this one shot that just came out called Salvager's Contagion, which is kind of like Alien meets The Walking Dead on a ship. So I'm really happy with that one. I really like how that came out. So they could be winning the game there. As far as novels are concerned, I would say that my novel Cannibal Fat Camp is my most popular novel, as well as the one that I think is the best, the most fun at the very least. Plays, we'll get into those later. Well, I guess I would go with Dial P for Peanuts. That's kind of my favorite play that I've ever written. So lots of stuff are out there. Lots of things to look at. I think the ones that resonate with me the most are the ones that are most fun, not necessarily the ones that make the most money, because it's kind of mutually exclusive sometimes. But yeah, lots of stuff to pick from, but it's always going to change. That's the fun part about this. There's always a new project out there that's going to supplant the one before it, as long as I'm doing my job right. That is.
What do you sort of do on your off time when you're not creating anything? How do you sort of recharge your batteries?
Well, I kind of work. It's kind of what I do. So if I'm not working, then if I'm not doing the school job, then I'm doing some creative job, or I'm doing some cool podcast, or something like that. When I have a minute to sit down, though, this is going to sound really bizarre, but I love the Hallmark mysteries. Yeah, I love them. Like those TV movie mysteries.
Yeah,
like Murder She Baked and the Flower Shop mysteries. I love Murder She Wrote. Is like my favorite TV show of all time.
Okay.
Columbo. I love all that stuff, and that's what I do. I zone out and I watch some goofy mysteries.
What are some projects or some ideas that, like, something that you wish you could just do in the future that maybe, might be a long shot, but you would love to do someday?
I would love to be the architect behind Universal's Dark Universe, the interconnected monster movie universe. Okay. That would be freaking badass. On a lower level, I would like to fix the Howling series. Because they really messed that up. There's lots of properties I'd like to work in, like different worlds I want to work in. My favorite comic of all time is Swamp Thing, and I would probably kill to work on a Swamp Thing comic in some capacity. May just slaughter someone to do that.
Oh,
because I would love to do that. It'll never happen, of course. I'd even settle for Man Thing. So from Marvel. I'm that ghetto. Anything with the thing in it. And so yeah, I mean that would be great stuff. I would love to do any of that stuff. Gosh. I was lucky enough. I got to work in I know how Stan Konopka's Rejected series is really popular right now from Source Point, and I got to do a one shot, a Rejected one shot, which was really cool. And I'd love to do more of that stuff. But yeah, there's so many different properties out there that I would love to write Murder She Wrote comics. Holy crap, that'd be awesome. But
hey, you never know, man. Happen. You never know. That could happen.
You never know. Jessica Fletcher, Angela Lansbury, call me.
Right. That would be awesome. to see what you would come up with.
Because she would have heard your podcast first and foremost.
Oh yeah.
And she'd be like, oh yeah, I listen to that podcast all the time. I was like, oh, I listen to that podcast all the time. I'm going to call that fat man.
Right. Let's do it. Get on it. Let's do it.
Just send it to her. Just listen to this.
And you've mentioned this a few times, working with everybody at Source Point Press. And then what I've just noticed too, starting to go to a lot of these Comic-Cons over the past past year or so is that there's a nice community of people and they kind of help each other out. Sort of from your perspective, you know, why is it important to have that sort of community effort from everybody?
I didn't know there was this community effort until I got in with the source point thing. It was really kind of adversarial before. Like everyone was kind of out. Like there was the mistaken idea that we're all fighting for that same $4 bill from somebody, and it kind of opened my eyes to like being a part of something, And that was really kind of cool. I mean, because everyone assumes creatively that you're on your own. You're on your own. That's how it works, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that what Travis has done is collected a large group of like-minded people, which is first and foremost tough to do, and second, there's kind of congruent personalities involved. So I think that it's kind of this is a rare thing in my experience, and I'm more than happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a transition from what I hear over the past few years. In regards to having more of a community effort, from like what I hear about what you call the artist alley at conventions, where at one point artist alley was kind of like what would you say, like the final place that old creators would go to still make a few bucks here and there, I guess. Like the retirement
possibly.
home or something, But then it kind of is from what I seen and heard from people, it got resurrected to sort of this community where creators of all generations can sort of get together in this one spot at all conventions, and you see different eras of creativity. You see newer artists, older artists, people that in the middle been around a little while, so you meet all these different artists. So I feel like there's been that change to where there's more sort of community going on now with artists and authors and creators of all different kinds this time, because like we were talking about before, we have so many tools online to publish and create stuff, so it just it's different now. So there doesn't need to be that competition to try to get that job with DC or Marvel or whatever.
Right. And I think more and more that big two job is people are seeing it as for what it's really worth. It's a lot of work for not a lot of money and not a lot of prestige. And would I still do it? Oh yeah, because there's beloved characters I want to work with, and that would be my motivation. But yeah, the camaraderie I think is something that I didn't expect, and it's not like 100%. Nothing is 100%. Right. But there is a large group of people that are really into. I like to say like we trade around the same $10 bill all the time. Like, oh, here, I'll buy your comic. And, oh, you just buy my comic.
Yeah, let the dollars circulate.
Yeah, there's only one $10 bill in any artist alley. It just goes to everybody.
Right.
It's getting passed back and forth. And I think that's kind of a hallmark of where we're at. It's probably in large part due to the size of these conventions getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger every year, with the convention promoters having to put more people there. So there's more artist alley spots open now, which means you need more people to fill them. And I think that's has gone a long way to helping this out too.
Right. If you had to sort of offer some sort of nugget of knowledge from your life or career to anybody listening to this podcast, doesn't matter what their sort of avenue of artistry, what sort of thing that they're doing, that they could project into their own life, what would that nugget of knowledge be?
See, my biggest lesson is we all negotiate our own contracts. There's a lot of room for whining and complaining in the arts, and people do it constantly. And most of the time that whining and complaining is someone portraying themselves as a victim to something or a victim to somebody. And what we have to, either they didn't get their money, or there's so much work involved with this, or I can't believe that there's this deadline coming up and I haven't done it yet, and I'm, all these things are against me. And really, the best way to succeed in this business is to simply do what you say you're going to do.
Right.
You negotiated that contract, just do it. And if you lose some sleep, you lose some sleep. You lose some money, well, you'll know for next time. So it's just a matter of don't whine, be professional, negotiate that contract, and then live up to said contract. Because the biggest thing that if I hear that somebody welched on a deal, or they were late with something, or, if you work for me and you turn stuff in late and it pushes back production when I have given you ample of time to do it and you've said you can do it and it doesn't happen, then you get no longer on my work with list. And that's what happens. So negotiate those contracts and then live up to those contracts.
Aside from this Rottentail film that's coming out, what other projects, other than some of the other ones that you already mentioned, do you have in the works right now that you can talk about?
Oh, I can talk about anything. Okay. So Rottentail is coming out April 12th. The premiere is on the 4th. That's the movie. We'll have the book out. Kurt Belcher is currently working on the Son of Rottentail graphic novel, which is the sequel. Okay. Later this year, I've got the Rejected Dead Girl one-shot coming out, and the Salvagers Contagion one-shot just released. So feel free to pick those up. The Rot Volume 1 is going to be in trade paperback this summer. And this Christmas, Kringle is going to go nationwide. We're having a soft release for the graphic of the supernatural western, The Final Bloody War of Colt Myers, at the New York Comic Con this year. Next year, there's a Monday Fatality one-shot with Sean Seal, Nowhere, Arizona, supernatural alien western one-shot, and Union Corpse, which is a Civil War zombie one-shot, all popping next year. At the end of next year is going to see the Dial P for Peanuts graphic novel. So that's kind of like the Agatha Christie meets Charles Schultz. The Peanuts characters grow up and die.
Oh.
Whoops. It's a little dark. It's
Whoa.
Darkish. So next year, actually, we're going to start the release of the Six from the Abyss miniseries, which you are going to flip over, and that's all I'm going to tell you right now. I've got a collection of my work called Macabre, my short comic work that's going to be out pretty soon. As far as the novels go, we're doing a re-release of Cherub, illustrated by Sean Seal, and Cannibal Fat Camp is going to be re-released by SourcePoint Press. I'm kind of moving my work over that way. And there's probably stuff I'm forgetting, but that's what I got going on right now.
Great. A lot of stuff to look forward to. And I always like to end my interviews with the same question. And that question is, who is somebody that's been a part of your life or career that I could realistically interview for this podcast that would have some great stories or lessons to talk about?
Oh, gosh. Shortly, well, you've already interviewed the Travis McIntyre, I believe.
Yeah.
Have you interviewed Joshua Werner?
No, I haven't.
Oh, he'd be stellar. He's a SourcePoint Press. Oh God, what's his title? Art director, but he's done comics and films and all kinds of great things. Like he was in a UFO, the Otis Files, with me. I think Brian Skiba, who I talked about quite a bit on here, the director of such wonderful films as Rottentail and Blood Moon Rising. Who else? So many people. So many cool people out in the world. I know if I'm not going to say somebody and they're going to get pissed off.
No, that's fine. Whatever. I don't think
fuck them. Those assholes.
Right.
So yeah, I think those are my top two: Josh Werner and Brian Skiba.
All right, great, good suggestions. And before we get out of here, where can people go online to get more information about you, about Rottentail, and about anything else that you're working on?
You could go to a couple of different places. So most of my print work is coming out through SourcePoint Press now. So you can go to sourcepointpress.com and check out what we're doing over there. I'm also the managing editor of the prose division. So all the novels and novellas that are coming out from SourcePoint are going through me. So, feel free to check that out and check out some cool books. If you want to check up and see what I'm doing just in general, you can go to davidchayes.com. or get on Facebook to facebook.com/abnormalent, and that's my handle for everything else, abnormalent. If you really feel like it, go to Amazon and pop David C. Hayes in and go buy some books there if you feel like it. Prime shipping, can't beat it.
Oh yeah. Spending dollars, prime shipping. Yeah.
I'm doing some podcast with some Kelly guy or something. It's coming up. Something like that.
Yeah, who's that asshole?
I don't know. Keeps bugging me. I tried to big time him for a while, but he was just like, keep bugging. So.
Wait, before we get out of here, I have to ask you to tell a funny story. Tell the story. There's a picture on Facebook of you breaking a chair at one of the Comic-Cons.
Oh yeah.
Like what was the story of that?
Shit, there should be like 5 of those. You want the story?
I feel like, and I think Travis just broke one also.
I'm morbidly obese. That's the story. And you routinely have awful chairs. Do you want to hear a really good chair story though?
Okay.
I'll tell you a really good chair story. Well, I went to go visit on the set of Rottentail. And I meet Corey Nemec and Billy McNamara and Dominique Swain of the stars. And, I'm the creator. We all have fun. We laugh. We talk. We're having a great time. And then they're shooting a great big scene with a bunch of extras in it. So I'm standing off to the side with a friend of mine from Phoenix. We're just watching the scene go down. And I'm pleased as punch. And there's an empty chair next to me, an empty folding chair. And so I'm just watching the scene, having a great time. And a production assistant walks up with Dominique Swain. So she's the female lead and a star in her own right. And she walks up with Dominique Swain, and the PA looks at me, looks at the empty chair, looks at me again, looks back at the empty chair, and then looks at me and says, "I'm sorry, but the chairs are for actual talent only." And she sat Dominique Swain down. And Dominique was about to tell her, like, "Hey, that's late." I'm like, no, she's going to feel horrible. So, yeah, I was getting photoshopped pictures of chairs saying for actual talent, not you, for weeks and weeks and weeks, which was my fun chair story.
Oh, that was perfect, and a perfect story to end this podcast on, man. It was great talking with you, man. And I will see you in a couple days. I'll try to make it over to the Rottentail premiere in Royal Oak.
Yeah. Please do. It's going to be a good time.
So that was my interview with David C. Hayes. He's always great to talk to. Always good to see at any of the comic conventions that I see him at. For more information about David C. Hayes and whatever he's working on, and on the Rottentail movie, you can always go to the show notes for this episode at freshasthepodcast.com. That's another episode in the books. Goodbye and good night.
Fresh is the word.